Hi everyone, are you ready for another week? This week we are going to be covering lessons 13 through 16, so let's get started. This week you're going to need your lessons manual, your student worksheets, your math card games manual, the AL abacus, the colored tiles, and you're going to need either 2 or 3 sticky notes or 2 or 3 index cards. So let's get started by turning to lesson 13. Last week, we briefly covered the multiples of 5s and 10s. This week, we are going to start work on multiplication facts of 1s, 2s, and 4s. In today's lesson, lesson 13, we are going to work on the multiples of 2s. In the warm-up section of this lesson, your child is going to count by 2s to 20 and count by 4s to 40. They are going to use the abacus unless you know for sure your child already knows how to count their multiples of 2s and 4s. In the middle of the first page of this lesson, you're going to see where it explains times, and it says, tell her that the word times means multiplication. Make sure you have your child understand when you say times or multiplied by, that they are the same thing. Also, in this lesson, your child will be doubling everything, which is multiplying by 2, isn't it? So be sure you use this term double alongside multiplied by 2 frequently so that your child can see that as they're multiplying by 2, that's the same thing as doubling. Also, you're going to be using doubling later on this week, so you want to make sure your child has a firm grasp on that concept. Also, there is a tidbit of potentially new information shown in the explanation of the second page of the lesson, the second paragraph down. It talks about when to place a comma in a number. Now, if your child does not know when to put a comma in the number, this lesson would be a really good time to explain that concept. You can use this paragraph to help teach it, and then you will want to provide some sample numbers for your child to practice this concept of when to put that comma in, more than what's provided in the lesson if necessary. The game for this lesson is Corners with Double Score game. This game is played just like the normal corners game, but when a player joins a 2 with another 2, they get to double their score. More information and instructions on how to play this variation of the game is included in the lessons manual. You may also want to include or introduce another game to help your child work on their multiples of 2. This really is a variation of my own creation, but it worked really well for my family. It's basically playing the addition war game. Now, if you've never played the addition war game, you can go to our blog and do a search for 2017 Summer Game Number 1, War, except instead of doing addition, you're going to actually multiply. The other difference is that you will only turn one card over. You're going to multiply that one card with a static card, a card that just stays up there, stays on your game board the whole time. So if we're working on our multiples of 2, and we draw one card, and I draw an 8, I'm going to multiply this 8 times the 2. And your opponent, whatever card they draw, let's say a 6, they're going to multiply their 6 times 2. So this card stays the same throughout the game, but you're really working on your multiples of 2. I've mentioned this before, but it's extremely important that your child says the math fact out loud as they're playing the math card games. I cannot tell you how important this is, and it will really help your child learn their math facts. So if we're playing this static card multiplication game, and I have this 2, and my opponent or I have drawn this 6 card, I'm going to say 6 times 2 is 12. And make sure your child says that out loud. That will really go a long way in helping them learn those math facts. All right, let's turn to lesson 14. In this lesson's warm-up, you're going to review those multiples of 5s and 10s. If you find that these multiples are a struggle for your child, then you may want to play this multiplication variation game of war with a static card of 5 or 10, working on the math facts that they struggled with in this warm-up section. This lesson basically has you working with your child through their worksheet of word problems. I love how Right Start Math has you help your child learn how to think through these word problems. You don't just assign the word problems or tell them specifically how to solve them. Instead, you're going to ask questions and guide them to learn how to solve them. So for the first word problem listed in the middle of the first page of lesson 14, you're going to start by reading the word problem to your child. Now, many times I change the name of the person in the word problem to my child's name to help them visualize the word problem a little bit better. So in this case, I would also include their sibling's name of the word problem. So the word problem is, Nathan is twice as old as his sister, who is 4 years old. How old is Nathan? So I would change it to make it my own children's name. Parker is twice as old as his sister, McKenna, who is 4 years old. How old is Parker? If your child is having a difficult time understanding the term twice as old, a couple of my dyslexic children struggled with that terminology. I hinted, or you can hint with the word double. So you can say something like, Nathan is twice as old or doubled his sister's age. That might help. Oh, okay, I understand what that means. Now, once you and your child have solved the problem, then your child is going to write sentences and equations out on their worksheet to explain how they solved it. A sample of what that answer might look like is listed in your lesson manual. Now, for problem 2, your child is going to be calculating the width of the garden by doubling the length. So if your child struggles with the mental math on this, you can have the child write their equation on their worksheet or on a whiteboard, or you can even have them use the abacus to solve that. Once your child has figured out the width of the garden, they're going to need to find the perimeter of the garden. Now, if your child does not know what perimeter means, then they can look it up using their math dictionary. When I taught my kids, I would always go back to the root word, by the way. I'll explain it to you. Peri means around, and meter means measurement. So perimeter means measurement around, and that might help your child remember it too. I use diagrams on the whiteboard as well to help them remember what perimeter means. Once your child has calculated the perimeter, have them write equations for it on their worksheet. Sample of what those equations might look like are in your lessons manual. Your child's equations might look slightly different, but that will give you the general idea of what the answers should be. You can then work through problem 3. In the explanation section next to problem 3, you will find some helpful hints on how to help your child work through this problem if they're struggling to figure this one out. Again, for this lesson, you will be playing corners with double score game. For more practice on learning their multiples of 2, 5, or 10, you can continue to play that multiplication war game with that static card. Okay, let's turn to lesson 15. If your book was printed before November of 2015, then there is a correction for you in that lesson. You're going to want to take a look at our corrections page and make the necessary changes in your lesson manual. All right, for this lesson, you're going to need 2 or 3 sticky notes or index cards for the math card game that you're going to play at the end of the lesson. You will notice that under the materials, it will have that listed in bold. So you know that you need to get something in addition to what came with your math set. Now we're going to work some more on multiplication, and we're going to be using the multiplication card deck and envelopes. It might be helpful for you to set those cards up. There are instructions in the explanation section of this lesson, the very top paragraph of the first page. But let me give you a real brief explanation of how to set that up. So you're going to want to get your multiplication card deck out, and those are the ones with the blue background. And then the envelopes look like this. So since we're working on 2s, I'm going to use the 2s. You'll see this has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. That's the multiples of 2. So you're going to want to find the cards, those exact cards, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. And you're going to take those multiplication math fact cards, or product cards, and you're going to put them in the product envelope. And that way they're already sorted for you, so you don't have to do anything. If you're going to work on your multiples of 2, you just got to get the 2's envelope out and you're ready to go and play those games. Now in lesson 14, we're going to work on the multiples of 2. Today your child is going to fill out a portion of worksheet 7. So they're going to work on this section here. This is the 2's. Later on we're going to work on the multiples of 4's. So today you're only going to fill out this portion of the worksheet. But save this worksheet, don't put it away because you're going to need it tomorrow and then next week as well. Also, when they're filling in that worksheet, make sure that they are not just simply skip counting. That's not going to help them in the long run. So what my kids tended to do was when they filled in 2, 4, 6, they were like, oh, I see the pattern. So they just 8, 10 without even looking at the problems. They were just filling in the answer. So make sure your child is doing more than just skip counting. One way to do that is to have them say the problem out loud as they're filling in the worksheet, or maybe even writing those problems on the whiteboard. Now at the bottom of lesson 14, your child is going to start working on their multiples of 4. And today they're going to think of the multiples of 4 as doubling the multiples of 2, because doubling of 2 is 4, right? So the answer to any multiplication of 2 is going to be doubled for the multiplication of problem of 4. So for example, if they have 4 times 6, they can also think of that as 2 times 6 equals 12. 12 being doubled, 2 12s is 24. So 4 times 6 is 24. So that's just generally how it works. All right, after you work through each section, your child is going to then fill out the worksheet, and they're going to use this worksheet for the next couple lessons, so keep it handy. Today, you're going to play the multiplication memory game. I played this game all the time with my kids when they were learning their multiplication facts. There is a blog for this game. It's called 2017 Summer Game Number 14, Multiplication Memory. For this game, you're going to need to write on a sticky note or index cards a time sign, multiplication sign, and an equal sign. So it would kind of look like this. So here's your time sign on an index card and the equal sign. The manual also recommends that you fill in another card with the multiple that you're working on. So like I could fill out another index card with the number 2 if I'm working on my multiples of 2. But I just simply used the basic card deck for that too. It was just easier and it was handier for me. But do whatever it is that's best for your family. There is an explanation on the side next to the multiplication memory game that says this: some children may benefit from playing multiplication memory game with the 2's envelopes. So that's what this is going to look like. Now, if you're not comfortable or if your child is really relying on this too much, you can also use the abacus to help have your child practice their multiplication math facts. Go ahead and turn to the last lesson of the week, lesson 16. This lesson is going to help your child get more familiar working on the multiples using the abacus. In this lesson, you may also want to randomly ask your child questions on various multiplication problems for each multiple family. For example, after you work on the section multiplying 2's, then ask what is 2 times 6? 2 times 4, 2 times 9, 2 times 1. That way you can see how much your child knows and where they might need some more practice. On the second page of this lesson, you will see that your child is going to continue working on worksheet 7. This worksheet will also be used next week, so make sure you don't put it away so you can't find it. Make sure you have access to it next week. The game for lesson 16 is What's on Top, and there is a blog for that game. You can do a search for it simply by typing in 2020 Summer Game Number 16, What's on Top, and you can view that blog for more detailed instructions on how to play that game. Just a reminder, because we're only working on 4 lessons a week, that gives you that 5th day to either catch up on a lesson that your child struggled with, or you can play more math card games. Because you're working on multiplication math facts, which are hard to learn for many children, I highly recommend that you play plenty of math card games on that 5th day to get a jump start on learning those. You're ready for another week. Also, don't forget that if you have any questions or concerns, you can email us or call us for help. We are here to help you. Have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next week when we talk about lessons 17 through 20. Bye, everybody.